Thank you, Blair Cottrel. The situation portraying itself in Australia, it articulates the problem quite well, because this is the same thing that's going on in the rest of the Western world. And thank you, Blair Cottrel, for sticking up for people. Right-mindedness. And, you know, if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, well, it's a duck, as you say. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for saying something about that. The government and media collusion. Yeah. In New Zealand, we've got that pretty seriously. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. And, you know, we must remember, one must remember that these people behind this, right, are kind of cowardly. You know, they sit behind their layers of power. It's the third party influence. Okay, the third party influence. And I've got it on extremely reliable authority that the third party influence is the way that things are done, you know. And so yeah, I think it'd be easy. You just keep doing what you're doing, because they have to capitulate to it, because, you know, they do not control the narrative. There's a video on YouTube actually about the narrative by these two guys called the Asian Capitalists, and it's really very, very well done. And about the narrative and about the government and media losing the narrative, which is what YouTube facilitates. YouTube facilitates that, and here we are, that we know. They know we know they know about this, and so this is this replication of the function of anxiety that I've been speaking about, because they've got to create a situation to distract everyone, you know, because we're talking about anxiety replicated in the group setting, right? and so what they do, you know, like in the mind will generate something to worry about, you know, which is what anxiety does, right? And so because they believe that anxiety is wisdom and virtuous, okay, because half your government's probably ex-Catholic, they want to replicate the function of anxiety. And so what they do is they do that. They invite as immigrants the worst kinds of people, and it gets the public all running around, and it's like, you know, distracted from what the government are doing. And then you've got these multiple, you've had multiple prime ministers and ministers, you know, there's a whole lot of infighting in the government, seemingly making it look like the government are actually absentee, right? But that's the impression they want to give you, so you don't focus on the third party involvement. Okay, the third party involvement. I mean, the third party involvement is like what's the third party involvement in the Ukraine? It's not Russia, because half of Ukraine is Russia. It's Russian, it speaks Russian. And what's the third party involvement in England? I'll tell you what that is. It is the European Union That is in one swoop, man, doing a third-party involvement to the whole of Europe in one hit. And then the Brussels, they are the third-party involvement in the economies of all of Europe and NATO as well. And so it's acting from a position of the third-party involvement, right? This is how it's done. And so then there's the public, and then there's the government, and then the third-party involvement becomes the media. Okay, and then the government switcheroo, and then the media becomes the governance. The media becomes the governance of the country, as it is in New Zealand, right? And then the government become the third-party involvement. So the government do all these things behind the scenes, and the media tell what we should be focused on, and so the third party involvement it's a bit like in Star Wars there when Luke and Darth Vader were in that work room space thing, and they're going to have the big sword fight, right? And the third-party involvement became all those things that were flying and hitting Luke, boosh, 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 hitting you from whatever side you weren't looking at, to just completely flummox the state of the state. I believe that, New Zealand's a bit lucky. New Zealand's so massively different to Australia in this respect, where how the people perceive government, because we have the Treaty of Waitangi, and that's amazing, man. The Helen Clark Labour government built the Supreme Court in New Zealand. Huge amounts of money. And I believe they only built it for one reason, and that is to find that they couldn't identify the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. And I think that was to somehow manipulate Maori politically to disempower them. Right? To disempower them. And because the thing is with the treaty, it's acknowledged that they're owed a lot financially, but since they say, we can't figure out the actual principles of the treaty, it means they can't actually talk about it, and that's what their purpose was for that. But now it comes down to it, because they can't legally identify the principles of the treaty. This is stopping all this third-party involvement, actually, like that's happening in other countries, right? They can't approach the dictatorship level control of society. They can't do it. And so it's a very interesting facet of New Zealand. But still, though, the government media collusion, this is something that's very significant in New Zealand society. Our television, when ISIS came on the scene, the mainstream media, they no shit, when ISIS, this is ISIS of Syria, ISIS, came on the scene, they literally, for 5 weeks straight, right, every night they promoted the strengths of ISIS on the news. Okay, the strengths of ISIS, right? And so something's up with that. And also the media, which is probably what has happened in Australia, re the Syrian refugees going into Europe, Yeah, if the media is pro-refugee welfare, they are pro-ISIS. And that's what I could say about that. If they're pro-refugee welfare, they're pro-ISIS. You know, and you see, it's like the old big caravan going up into the US border. There was all the news a while ago. Yeah, if the third party involvement hadn't you know, done their thing to all those countries down South America, that wouldn't be happening. And they've been doing that all the century, I'm sure, you know. And so yeah. So I just thought I'd say a few words. You know, really, I mean, who could blame the public in Australia there for taking matters into their own hands? Okay, because these people are psychotic. These black youths running around, they're psychotic, and I feel that if they had their handcuffs put on them, the whole family should be deported. Okay, if one family member of an immigrant group has the handcuffs put on them, okay, the whole family should be deported. Because it's only how they raise their kids that they end up behaving like this. That's the fact, man. And so for that reason, because the parents raise their kids like this, we know what the parents are thinking. You know, we've got a pretty good idea. We can get a pretty good idea of what their beliefs are, and it's like that third party involvement again, right? You know, you've got the beliefs acting on the thinking, and then and that gets projected onto the children, and so the beliefs are like the third party involvement in the relationship. You know, I mean, you've got respect and courtesy, right? Respect and courtesy. And so these beliefs act as a third party against respect and courtesy. And that's your third party involvement. And so it's curious how this how you can transpose this in all these different places, and it's kind of a copy of itself. And so that's why I wrote the Revelation of the 8 Laws, and which you should check out. You know, that's the video, The Cry for Evolution Answered. And under that video, there's a text document, a Facebook link to a text document, and I've identified 40 post-discovery data points. So yeah, since this third-party thing works so effectively, I've got a third-party thing. It's called the Revelation of the 8 Laws, and you should have a look at it, and then you can see how the news works. You know, the news works like that, you know, and how the government does these announcements. And, you know, like the present government in New Zealand, since they've come into power a year or so ago, right, they've actually started 120 investigations into things, right, which means they don't have any brains, man. They don't have any brains. There's a whole lot of, you know, people will, you know, normal people, we instinctively know what is the cause of the problem that we're looking at. We know what it is, and so that we know they've got no brains really about it. There's something wrong with them. Okay, something happens to people when they get in power, when they get in control of other people's money, right, the public purse. We know that something happens to their brain, And I think what it is something that is going on a lot. But in that circumstance, it has a certain character, and that's what it looks like. And I mean, you know, this thing's going on. Right? This thing is going on like big time, because with the Trump thing, how he was so openly hated by the media in the US, and no one seemed to question it. You know, there's not one psychologist that has come up in the media to voice an opinion against talking to people like that. You know, that's not how you talk to people. And in New Zealand, it's the same thing. It's like there's some very hideous experiences I've had witnessing how the media approach certain subjects and certain situations, and it's like they want it to be worse because they go to discuss it, and that's the main moment, man, the main moment when you go to say to something, and they load it up with contention and umbrage and brouhaha, and it's they're seriously angry, and it's like, you know, this is exactly like all the domestic violence situations, how they start. You know, all those how the argument starts, right? That's exactly how that works. Someone loads up in your ear hole all sorts of, oh, I'm offended as fuck. And no one has ever questioned that. No one has ever raised even an opinion of that. And in all the last 20 years of feminism and political correctness and that, no one's ever stepped up publicly and said anything to support or in support of respect and courtesy. That's all gay people want. That's all immigrants want. That's all everyone wants. That's the actual standard. That's actually how society works. That's the freaking thing. That's why all these things that these black guys are doing are crimes, and they're really offensive crimes. That's why they are bad. It's because it's based on the standard that respect and courtesy is good, okay, and how far disassociated from respect and courtesy the behaviour is. That's how criminal it is, right? How serious it is, right? And so, you know, because, like, you know, for real, the way the media trumps up these ideas, like in New Zealand, they'll go to anywhere in the world to get a story of emotional trauma. You know, it'll be something down here in New Zealand, you know, and then they'll go way the hell over the world to see a plane crash, you know, and it's always 50 people died, or, you know, anything that involves people getting hurt, right? And so, you know, the government and media collusion, right? You've seen, like, the Sons of Anarchy program. You've seen, you know, so many things, man. And we've been played like fuck because Star Wars, well, this band of rebels, well, they're ISIS. They're actually a group of terrorists, right? And this is the thing about it. And so the same relationship dynamic is being replicated, you know, all over the show, man. You know, and the media ignoring these black guys. They've been doing that forever in New Zealand. You know, they haven't disclosed the ethnicity of the people. So the thing is, a good point to make is, because they believe in multiculturalism, they are pretending that actually white people don't have a soul. They don't have a soul. We don't have spirituality. That's the implication that they're implying, right? And this has got to be really firmly stamped on this, okay? Because that's the most. See, that's the big lie of anxiety, right? It takes over the soul, and they're only trying to capitalise on that. They're trying to capitalise on that because courage acknowledges anxiety, right? Because when courage is considering something it's concerned about, it's not anxiety, it's called prudence. You know, prudence. Being objective and prudent, and it's something of how consciousness nurtures our experience we have, you know. And so just a few words there of support. And I know it has nothing to do with race. And this whole business of the media saying racist, calling racist anyone time wants to talk about that. So New Zealand is a bit of a basket case of that. So there's all these behaviours of these ethnicities, and no one's talking about it. And I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to go off to Auckland, hopefully very soon, to go full-time activist for my political party, the TNIL. And if you want to understand what the TNIL political party is about, you can actually go and look at the revelation of the 8 laws. In fact, you can look at a video called God So Loved the World, He Put Satan Here. Okay. And then you can read the text or what the video, The Cry for Evolution Answered. Yeah, the text doc is a transcript of that video, or I've made that video from that transcript. And you can see a whole lot clearer. Instead of you know, making objective speculations about what they're up to. Okay, once you read the revelation of the 8 laws, you'll be able to make specific allegations that are grounded in reality by way of that they are observed behaviours. And the qualification, it's actually, it's you know, by virtue of the fact that it is a qualification that is based on observation, okay, this is virtually legally binding, okay, because they can't escape. They can't challenge the validity of it when it's based on observation. Okay, so have a gander at the old revelation of the 8 laws, and I think you'll quite like it, you know, because it's a means to challenge what is going on. It's a means to, it's, you know what it is? It's a coup of courage over anxiety, right? Because anxiety has absolute freedom of operation because it has control of language. Okay, but the revelation of the 8 laws is a coup so that anxiety has no control over language and thought. And because it loses all, it just evaporates. Anxiety evaporates, right? And because of that, all the planning, you know, then becomes the product of courage. Courage, optimism, enthusiasm, you know, all those good things. So check it out. And so yeah. So that's what I recommend to do about the black youths. And you know what, the people that are perpetrating, the people who are programming the media, I would actually like to see them interviewed, and they should answer to these accusations live on YouTube. You know, because as we all know, YouTube is the news of anything you want. And their news, the media's news, is like living with a schizophrenic. And it's a replication of anxiety, actually, what they do. They're determined to have you believe something that is usually, mostly everything they talk about is in the periphery of one's life. And they like to make this small peripheral thing the big news, the big deal, because how do they initiate doubt? How do they initiate doubt in your mind? That is the secret key to understanding how the power of anxiety works, how it initiates doubt. And so it raises a contention about something that you're not even interested in. It's of no value. You know, It's a very trivial thing, and they get it in your face to make it sound really important, and while they quietly amp up the immigrant numbers. And so New Zealand's got plenty of that, plenty of these problems that are going on that are specifically about attenuating the public's attention and energy. And it's a virtually anaesthetising, it anaesthetised the host, actually. It anaesthetises the host. And that's what it does. And this is all based on the relationship. While courage acknowledges anxiety, anxiety does not acknowledge courage. Okay? And as you'll see in the revelation of that laws, it's a giant freak accident that it's turned out like this. But now that it's qualified, it goes from like being, you know, no one can even speak about anxiety at all, and everyone pretends it doesn't exist. It goes from like trying to catch smoke to then something you can figuratively hold in your hand and look at. And it renders anxiety tangible for the first time in the history of the human race. And then all their power disappears when you do that. That anxiety has been qualified as a political entity, renders it tangible, and then all their power disappears, because it's only while anxiety has been intangible that this can actually happen. Keeping in mind the whole reason the immigrant thing's happening is because of what's happened to their countries, because Wall Street wanted to own their resources, right? It's not the US, it's not America, it's the financialists, cultists in the US that wanted to own fucking Somalia's resources, so it keeps the country fucked. And it's like having it in storage, having it in economic storage, putting all their resources in economic storage to when they want to take it. And that's exactly what I think of Venezuela. You know, they've put that country in economic storage to where they can go and get it when they want it. That's what's happening. And that's why that guy's just been re-elected, because he's their man. He's their man in Venezuela. Which is what the fucking situation is. Guess what? That's who Che Guevara was as well. Che Guevara was their man in South America. And he went through all those countries, right? Yeah. Delivering this toxic poison into the minds of the people along the way. And I'm talking about actually the politicians. And it's installing maybe the secret dictatorship in all the financial institutions in South America as well. Hey, anyway, go Blair, keep it up, mate. I like what I'm seeing, man. And so, God bless Australia. Yeah, thanks, man.